My family called me the black sheep for as long as I can remember. At every holiday dinner, I was the one they joked about. My brother was the successful one. My sister was the responsible one. And I was the problem child who never seemed to fit into the perfect family picture. When I chose a different career, they laughed. When I moved away, they said I was running from responsibility. When Grandpa started spending more time with me, they accused me of manipulating him. I ignored them because Grandpa was the one person in my family who never made me feel like I didn't belong. Then he died. At the funeral, my family barely spoke to me. They assumed Grandpa had left everything to my father, just like everyone expected. But when the lawyer opened Grandpa's will, the room went completely silent, because Grandpa hadn't forgotten me. He had left me something far more valuable than money. And what he revealed about my family that day would change all of us forever. My name is Uthan Carter, and I was the black sheep of my family. At least, that's what they called me. My father, Richard, had a very specific idea of what a successful family looked like. My older brother, Jason, was a lawyer. My younger sister, Emily, was a doctor. And then there was me. I worked with my hands. I repaired old buildings. I bought damaged properties, renovated them, and rented them out. I wasn't ashamed of it. I actually loved what I did. But my father thought it was embarrassing. Whenever relatives asked what I did, he would answer for me. Uthan is figuring things out. I hated that sentence, because I wasn't figuring anything out. I knew exactly what I wanted. I just wasn't living the life my father wanted for me. Jason had gone to an expensive law school. My father proudly paid for his education. Emily went to medical school. My parents helped her with tuition and living expenses. When I told them I wanted to start a property renovation company, my father laughed. He said, "You're going to play contractor." I said, "I'm going to build a business." Jason laughed. Emily smiled awkwardly. My mother told me not to take it personally. But I did. Because it wasn't one comment. It was years of comments. At Thanksgiving, my father would introduce Jason as our attorney. Then he'd introduce Emily as our doctor. When he got to me, he'd say, "And Uthan does his little real estate projects." Little. That's what he called everything I built. My first property was a small abandoned duplex in Ohio. It was ugly. The paint was peeling. The plumbing was terrible. The yard was completely overgrown. Everyone told me I was wasting my money. I bought it anyway. I renovated it myself. 6 months later, I rented both units. Then I bought another property. Then another. Within 5 years, I owned 23 rental units. I had employees, contractors, property managers. My company was profitable. But my family still thought I was the black sheep. Then there was Grandpa. My grandfather, William Carter, was different. He didn't care about titles. He didn't care about fancy offices. He cared about whether you could keep your word. He had built a small construction supply company from nothing. He understood business. He understood hard work. And most importantly, he understood me. When I was a teenager, he took me to job sites. He taught me how to read blueprints. He showed me how to negotiate with suppliers. He taught me how to inspect a building. And when I told him I wanted to start my own company, he didn't laugh. He said, "Then start." I asked, "What if I fail?" He smiled. "Then you'll know more than you knew yesterday." Those words stayed with me. Grandpa became my mentor. My family noticed. And they didn't like it. My father would sometimes joke, "Dad, stop filling Uthan's head with these crazy ideas." Grandpa would respond, "At least Uthan has ideas." My father didn't appreciate that. Neither did Jason. As the years passed, Grandpa and I became even closer. I visited him every weekend. We worked on old cars. We talked about business. We ate breakfast at the same diner every Sunday morning. He knew everything about my company. He knew what properties I owned. He knew what mistakes I had made. He knew what I was planning next. And he was proud. Then, one morning, Grandpa called me. His voice sounded different. He said, "Uthan, I need you to come see me." I drove to his house immediately. He was sitting in his office. There were papers spread across the desk. I asked, "What's going on?" He said, "I've been thinking about the future." I sat down. He looked at me. "I want you to promise me something." "What?" "Don't let them convince you that you're less than them." I knew exactly who he meant. I said, "Grandpa, I'm okay." He shook his head. "No, you're strong. That's different." I smiled. He continued, "Your father has spent years comparing you to your brother and sister." I didn't respond. He thinks success has one shape. I said, "I know." Grandpa leaned forward. "Don't make the mistake of believing him." Then he asked me something strange. "Do you still have the company documents from that first duplex?" I laughed. "Yes." "Good." He smiled. I didn't understand why he asked. I would later. A few months after that conversation, Grandpa's health declined. He had been sick for a while, but this time it was serious. I visited him every day. My family visited too. But there was tension. My father wanted to move Grandpa into an expensive care facility. Grandpa refused. He wanted to stay home. My father said, "You're not thinking clearly." Grandpa became angry. "I know exactly what I'm doing." My father looked at me. "You're encouraging him." I said, "He's an adult." My father said, "You're always interfering." I didn't argue. Grandpa looked at me. He smiled. Then he said, "Let him talk." My father left the room. That night, Grandpa and I sat together. He said, "Your father thinks you're the black sheep." I laughed. "I know." He looked at me. "Do you know what a black sheep really is?" I said, "The one that doesn't fit." He shook his head. "No." He pointed toward the window. "A black sheep is sometimes the one who notices that the whole flock is walking in the wrong direction." I laughed. "That's very Grandpa." He smiled. Then he became serious. "Promise me something." "What?" "Don't let money change your heart." I said, "I won't." "Good." Then he squeezed my hand. "Because you're going to have a lot more responsibility than you think." I didn't understand. A week later, Grandpa died. He passed peacefully in his sleep. I was devastated. My family gathered at the funeral. There were relatives everywhere. People who hadn't spoken to Grandpa in years suddenly appeared. Jason wore an expensive suit. Emily cried beside my mother. My father stood near the front. I stayed toward the back. Nobody spoke much to me. After the funeral, my father said, "The lawyer wants everyone at the house tomorrow." I asked for the will. He nodded. Then he said, "Don't expect anything." I looked at him. "What?" He shrugged. "Dad was practical. Most of his assets will probably go to me." I didn't respond. He continued, "Whatever happens, don't make this difficult." I almost laughed. "I won't." The next afternoon, everyone gathered at Grandpa's house. My father, my mother, Jason, Emily, me, and Grandpa's attorney, Mr. Harris. There was a long wooden table in the living room. Grandpa had used it for decades. I sat quietly. My father sat at the head. Jason sat beside him. Emily sat beside my mother. Mr. Harris opened a folder. He looked around the room. Then he said, "Before I read the will, Mr. Carter left specific instructions." My father looked confused. "What instructions?" Mr. Harris said. He wanted everyone present. My father nodded. Mr. Harris began reading. The first few items were expected. Personal belongings, small gifts, family photographs, some charitable donations. Then came the business. Grandpa owned a construction supply company. Everyone assumed my father would inherit it. Mr. Harris said, "The majority ownership of Carter Supply will be transferred according to the following conditions." My father leaned forward. I watched quietly. Mr. Harris continued, "The company will not be transferred to Richard Carter." My father's face changed. Jason sat up. Emily looked confused. My father said, "What?" Mr. Harris calmly repeated the sentence. "The company will not be transferred to Richard Carter." My father looked furious. "That can't be right." Mr. Harris said, "Please allow me to finish." He continued, "The controlling interest in Carter Supply will be transferred to Ethan Carter." Silence. Nobody moved. I thought I had heard incorrectly. My mother stared at me. Jason's mouth fell open. My father looked like someone had punched him. I said, "What?" Mr. Harris looked at me. "Your grandfather left you the controlling interest in the company." My father stood. "No." Mr. Harris didn't react. My father said, "My father promised me this company." Mr. Harris said, "Your father left written instructions stating otherwise." My father looked at me. "This is ridiculous." I didn't speak. Jason turned toward me. "You knew." I shook my head. "No." My father shouted, "You knew." I said, "I didn't." Mr. Harris raised his hand. "Please." Everyone became quiet. Then he opened another document. "There is a letter from Mr. Carter." He handed it to me. My hands were shaking. I opened it. It began, "Ethan, if you're reading this, I've probably already said goodbye." I had to stop. I couldn't breathe. Mr. Harris said, "You can read it privately if you'd prefer." I shook my head. "Read it." He nodded. Then he began, "Ethan, I know your family has called you the black sheep." My mother covered her mouth. Jason looked down. My father stared at the floor. The attorney continued, "I have watched them underestimate you for years." My eyes filled with tears. "I watched you build your first business when everyone told you it would fail. Then I watched you build another. I watched you work when nobody was applauding. I watched you help people who could never help you back." My throat tightened. "That is why I'm leaving you control of Carter Supply." My father suddenly said, "This is absurd." Mr. Harris continued, "Richard, if you're interrupting this letter, please stop." Everyone froze. The attorney looked slightly amused. Then he continued, "I know you believe Ethan isn't capable of running a company." My father looked furious. "But capability isn't inherited through birth order." That sentence hit hard. Mr. Harris continued, "It's earned through responsibility." I stared at the paper. Then came the part nobody expected. "Ethan, I also want you to know something about your father." My heart started racing. The attorney continued, "Richard has been taking money from the company for years." My father stood. "That's a lie." Mr. Harris said, "Please sit down." My father refused. Grandpa's letter continued. I discovered several unauthorized transfers. My mother looked at my father. Jason stared at him. Emily whispered, "Dad." My father said, "It's not what you think." Nobody moved. Mr. Harris pulled out a folder. He said, "These are copies of the financial records Mr. Carter instructed me to preserve." He placed them on the table. I looked at the documents. There were payments. Large payments. transfers to accounts connected to my father, and several payments connected to Jason. I looked at Jason. He immediately said, "I didn't know about that." My father shouted, "You knew everything." Jason looked shocked. "What?" My mother stood. "Richard, what is this?" My father started sweating. Mr. Harris said, "Mr. Carter also discovered that several of these funds were used to finance Jason's investments." I looked at my brother. He became pale. My father said, "I was protecting my son." Grandpa's letter continued. "And that is why I cannot leave the company to Richard." The room became silent again. Then Mr. Harris read the final paragraph. "I love my son, but love does not mean allowing someone to destroy what you spent your life building." My father sat down. He looked defeated. Then Grandpa's letter turned toward me. "Ethan, I am not giving you the company because you're my favorite." I started crying. "I am giving it to you because you've shown me that you understand what ownership means. Ownership is not power. It's responsibility. You will have employees depending on you. Families depending on those employees. Customers depending on your word. Treat every one of them better than the people who underestimated you." I wiped my eyes. Then came the final sentence. "And Ethan, don't become the black sheep they think you are." I looked up. Mr. Harris closed the letter. Nobody spoke. Then my father said something I never expected. "You don't deserve it." I looked at him. He continued, "You've never even worked in the company." I said, "You made sure I couldn't." He became silent. Jason stood. "This is insane." Mr. Harris looked at him. "Your grandfather anticipated that reaction." Jason froze. Mr. Harris opened another envelope. "There is a second letter." My father said, "No." The attorney looked at him. "Yes." He read it. "If Jason claims Ethan doesn't deserve the company, remind him that Ethan once offered to modernize the company's operations for free." Jason looked at me. I remembered. 5 years earlier, I had proposed an automated inventory system. My father rejected it. Jason had laughed. Grandpa had remembered. The letter continued. I watched Ethan offer solutions while others criticized him. My father looked down. Then came another revelation. Grandpa had already been testing some of my ideas secretly. He had used my recommendations in several parts of the business. And they had worked. My father knew. He had simply never told me. The room felt completely different. The person they had called the black sheep had been the one Grandpa trusted most. The person they thought couldn't lead was now the owner. And the people who had spent years mocking me had to sit there and watch. After the reading, everyone left the room except me. Mr. Harris stayed. I asked him, "Why didn't Grandpa tell me?" He said, "He wanted you to keep building your own life." I asked, "Did he know I would accept the company?" Mr. Harris smiled. "He said you'd probably argue with him for an hour." I laughed through my tears. That sounds like him. Then Mr. Harris handed me another envelope. I opened it. Inside was a photograph. Grandpa and me standing outside my first renovated property. On the back, he had written, "Black sheep, no, just building a different flock." I broke down. That was Grandpa. He had known exactly what he was doing. Over the next several months, I took control of Carter's supply. It wasn't easy. The company had financial problems. My father's unauthorized withdrawals had created serious cash flow issues. Jason's investments had drained additional resources. I could have shut everything down. Instead, I rebuilt it. I audited every department. I renegotiated contracts. I improved inventory systems. I introduced modern technology. I listened to employees. I asked questions, and I did something my father never did. I admitted when I didn't know something. The company grew. Within 2 years, revenue increased dramatically. Employees received raises. We hired more people. We expanded into new markets. And Carter's supply became stronger than it had been when Grandpa was alive. My father struggled with it. He had lost control, but he was still my father. I didn't abandon him. I helped him financially, but I refused to give him control of the company again. He eventually moved to a smaller house. Jason had to rebuild his career. Emily remained a doctor. My mother tried to keep everyone connected. Slowly, things changed. One Thanksgiving, my father came to my house. He stood in the doorway. I asked, "Are you coming in?" He nodded. We sat at the dining table. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "Your grandfather was right." I looked at him. "About what?" He sighed. "About you." I didn't respond. He continued. "I spent years thinking you were the least successful person in this family." I smiled slightly. "I know. I was wrong." I nodded. Then he said something even more difficult. "I was jealous." That surprised me. "Of me?" He nodded. "You built things without needing me." I stared at him. He continued. "Jason needed my money. Emily needed my approval. But you didn't." I didn't know what to say. My father looked down. And I hated that. That was the first time he had ever told me the truth. I said, "Dad, I never wanted to compete with you." "I know that now." He looked at me. "I thought being your father meant you should need me." I said, "Maybe being my father meant you should have trusted me." He nodded. "I should have." We sat quietly. Then he asked, "Do you hate me?" I shook my head. "No." "Why?" I thought about Grandpa. Because Grandpa had taught me not to let bitterness control my life. I said, "Because Grandpa wouldn't want me to." My father's eyes filled with tears. He looked away. Years later, I still think about that day when the lawyer read Grandpa's will. My family called me the black sheep. They thought I was the least successful, the least responsible, the one who didn't fit. But Grandpa saw something they didn't. He saw that being different wasn't the same as being wrong. He saw that I was willing to build slowly. He saw that I cared about people. He saw that I didn't need applause to keep working. And most importantly, he saw that I could be trusted with something bigger than myself. The will didn't just change my financial future. It changed the way my family saw me. But by then, I didn't need their approval anymore. That was the real irony. For years, I wanted my father to look at me and say, "I'm proud of you." When Grandpa's will gave me the company, my father finally did. But it didn't feel as important as I thought it would. Because Grandpa had already said it. And Grandpa had believed in me when nobody else did. The inheritance wasn't revenge. The company wasn't revenge. The truth about my father wasn't revenge. The real victory was that I never became the person my family accused me of being. I didn't become bitter. I didn't destroy them. I didn't use my new position to punish anyone. I built, just like Grandpa taught me. I built a stronger company. I built better relationships with employees. I built a life I was proud of. And I finally understood what Grandpa meant when he called me a black sheep. Sometimes the black sheep isn't the problem. Sometimes the black sheep is simply the person brave enough to walk away from the expectations of everyone else. My family thought I didn't belong. Grandpa knew better. And when the lawyer opened that will, the truth finally came out. The black sheep wasn't the failure. The black sheep was the one person Grandpa trusted to carry his legacy. And by the time my family understood that, It was already too late to change the past. But it wasn't too late to change the future. So I did. I took Grandpa's company. I took his lessons. I took his trust. And I built something worthy of the man who had always believed in me. The family called me the black sheep. Grandpa called me his legacy. And in the end, Grandpa was right.